Chapter 23, Circulation and Respiration. So let's look at some unifying concepts. So animals exchange materials with the environment, making them open systems in a way, by a number of means. For example, diffusion, which is the movement of molecules from an area of their higher concentration to an area of their lower concentration. So with the respiratory system, when you breathe in air, the air that comes into your alveoli, which are little pockets, little air sacs within your lungs, the air that comes in there has a higher oxygen concentration than in the blood capillaries, the small little blood vessels that are surrounding the alveoli. So the oxygen diffuses down its concentration gradient from the little alveolar air sacs into the bloodstream. And by the way, carbon dioxide does the opposite. Carbon dioxide, which is in higher concentration in the blood that's going into your lungs, diffuses out of the bloodstream into the alveolar air spaces, and then you breathe the carbon dioxide out. So diffusion is an essential process in the exchange of materials, in this case, respiratory gases. And then a circulatory system for rapid long-distance transport of materials within bodies so that materials can be diffused into cells and tissues throughout the body. So for example, we had diffusion of respiratory gases in the lungs here, but that oxygen, which is needed by all of the cells throughout the body and tissues and organs, has to get distributed, transported there. So the lungs provide the oxygen into the bloodstream, and then the bloodstream, via the pumping action of the heart, delivers those nutrients throughout the entire body. So for large organisms like animals, we have circulatory systems for transport of the materials that are needed for survival. Now, some of the simplest animals, the sponges, do not have a circulatory system because they rely just on diffusion of materials directly into their cells. So sponges, again, are very unique animals, and we talked about them when we did the animals. But most of the other animals do have some kind of circulatory system with three main parts. Oh, and then, by the way, things like jellyfishes and hydra also do not have circulatory system because their body walls are so thin and only comprised of a few cells thick that all the cells essentially are in contact with the external environment, and diffusion is good enough to deliver materials and exchange of materials with the environment. But all the other organisms, the more complex ones, do have a circulatory system with three main components or three main parts. A central pump, so think of the heart, which is pumping blood. A vascular system, or a unique set of tubes for delivery of materials. So in humans, the tubes would be the blood vessels, or our vascular network. And then the circulating fluid. In humans, it's blood, but in other animals, it's referred to as a different fluid. Or it's called a different name besides blood. So let's look at a few circulatory systems. One is the open circulatory system. So this is a somewhat simpler circulatory system. And this is where the circulating fluid, often called hemolymph, and I can't remember if that's in your textbook or not, but it's a circulating fluid that gets pumped through open-ended tubes or, vessels, and then the fluid flows out among the cells and tissues, and diffusion of materials, exchange of materials happens that way, and then that circulating fluid gets back into the pumping organ, the heart, and the heart pumps that fluid back through some vessels, and then the vessels are open, and the fluid again works its way around the cells, delivering and exchanging materials. So you do have a pumping organ that's called the heart, and open vessels or tubes. So this is an open circulatory system because it's not closed. The circulating fluid leaves the vessels and kind of just percolates around the cells and tissues and organs before that circulating fluid gets back to the heart. So this type of circulatory system, an open circulatory system, is found in many invertebrates. Those are organisms without backbones, including most of the mollusks like clams and snails and slugs, and then all of the arthropods, anything with an exoskeleton, like all the shrimps and lobsters and crabs, and then insects, which are very, very successful organisms. But even though like some of the spiders might look pretty large, they're not that big. And an open circulatory system works well if you're not huge. Now, more complex organisms have a closed circulatory system. This means that the circulating fluid, now called blood, is pumped through closed blood vessels or tubes. So you have a pumping organ, the heart. It pumps blood through blood vessels. The exchange of materials is via very, very small blood vessels called capillaries, which are very thin, allowing for diffusion to occur easily. And then the blood continues through blood vessels, through more capillaries, and eventually the blood returns to the heart. So the blood never leaves the heart, meaning never escapes the heart except through blood vessels, and the blood never leaves blood vessels either. So the blood is always contained within the heart and or within blood vessels. Because of that, these type of circulatory systems are called closed circulatory systems. So also found in many invertebrates like earthworms and nearly all other animals like sharks, rays like stingrays, and fish. And then amphibians, like frogs and salamanders, reptiles, lizards, salamanders, birds, and mammals. So, a closed circulatory system of humans and other vertebrates, organisms with backbones, is called a cardiovascular system. Cardio for heart, vascular meaning the vascular structures or the blood vessels. So we call this a cardiovascular system. And it consists of the pumping organ, the heart, the blood itself, that fluid connective tissue, and then the blood vessels that the blood is contained within. So the blood circulates to and from the heart through three basic types of blood vessels. One type is called an artery. So arteries, by definition, we're always carrying blood away from the heart. So A for away, A for artery, okay? And arteries, as they move further and further away from the heart, they branch into smaller arteries and into arterioles as they get close to organs and close to what are called capillary beds. So here's an example of an artery. It branches into smaller structures, arteries called arterioles, and then we'll talk about capillary beds soon enough. The capillaries, these are the smallest blood vessels, and these are where the exchange of materials occurs between the blood, which is always retained within the vessels, and the surrounding interstitial fluid, and then those materials will diffuse into the cells and tissues and organs. So this is possible because the capillaries are very, very thinly walled. And the blood percolates through here fairly slowly. As the blood leaves capillaries, the blood enters into small veins called venules, and then venules merge into larger structures called veins, and then the blood returns back to the heart via the largest veins. So voyage back to the heart, V for voyage back to the heart, for veins. All right? So there are two cardiovascular or closed circulatory systems that exist in the vertebrates: single circulatory system or circulation system, and a double circulation system. So the single circulation system is found in bony fishes, like the kind we usually eat, rays, and the sharks. And in this single circulation system, the blood flows once through the heart by way of a single circuit. So what that means is the blood goes to the heart once and then travels towards the gills for gas exchange, picking up oxygen, dropping off carbon dioxide. So the blue color here means oxygen poor blood. The oxygen content increases, carbon dioxide content decreases after gas exchange in the gills. The oxygenated, oxygen-rich blood goes to the body for delivery of oxygen at the capillaries throughout the entire body. Oxygen is delivered to the cells. Carbon dioxide is picked up from the cells and leaving the body capillary systems or networks. Now, oxygen-poor blood, carbon dioxide-rich blood goes back to the heart. Heart pumps, and that cycle continues continuously as long as the animal's alive. So it's called a single circulation system because the blood goes to the heart once, then goes to the body, and then comes back to the heart. Kind of easy to draw in a way, okay? Now the double circulation system is found in the amphibians and the reptiles, which includes the birds, and then the mammals. Here, the blood flows through the heart twice in its circuit throughout the entire body. Between the lungs and the heart is called the pulmonary circuit. That's where the heart pumps blood. Actually, just half of the heart, as we'll see, pumps blood. That's oxygen poor. Notice the blue color. Goes to the lungs. The capillaries in the lungs pick up oxygen, drop off carbon dioxide. The blood is now oxygen rich, comes back to the heart. Notice that's different than over here. Comes back to the heart, to the other side of the heart. And now that oxygen rich blood gets pumped out of the heart and goes into the body, the systemic circuit. So between the heart and the body is the systemic circuit. So now in the systemic circuit are the capillary beds at the tissues and organs, where the oxygen-rich blood is delivering oxygen via diffusion, picking up carbon dioxide also via diffusion, and now the oxygen-poor, carbon dioxide-rich blood comes back to the heart. And then the heart pumps, and that blood goes into the circulatory system, back to the heart pumps again. That blood goes into the systemic circuit, and so forth. Okay? So there are two circulations through the heart, as we'll see in more detail as we go through this chapter. So that's the double circulation system in you, because you are a mammal, a human, and then these other organisms as well. So the pulmonary circuit. Pulmonary, if you know your Spanish, pulmón means lungs, or Latin or French, all right? Italian, Portuguese. So in the lungs, carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the air sacs in the lungs, and then the carbon dioxide is exhaled, and oxygen moves in the opposite direction from the air sacs into the blood vessels, the capillaries, and then oxygen-rich blood returns to the heart. Right? That's the pulmonary circuit.